What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Nick, let's get right into Khamzat Chimaev's absolute and utter domination of Kevin Holland last night. And in getting Holland out of there, he's done something that both Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson were not able to do. And these are two guys that are at the top of 185. So where do you put his performance?
Well, this obviously reigns very high for performances of the year to date. There was talks about the gangsters. Who's the real gangster going into this card? And, you know, Nate Diaz's hat's always in there. Chimaev says he's the real gangster. Kevin Holland says, y'all aren't about that life. Well, all I have to say is everybody that decided to take a short notice fight, a 24-hour notice fight, is considered a gangster in my eyes. Legion Liang and D-Rod, they're in there. And then all the other guys in the mains and co-mains. That's just awesome to see these guys basically sacrifice something for themselves to make the card happen. So I got to give credit where credit's due, and all the entire main card, especially those last three fights, really deserve a lot of credit. But one thing I didn't expect going into this fight was we were going to see another Khamzat Chimaev perfect performance, right? So we got to see him fight three times and only get punched twice in his first three fights to the UFC. And then he goes in there with Gilbert Burns, and it's an absolute knockdown, drag-out war. And you kind of assume from then on out he's going to be in really tough fights that are going to push him and they're going to make him work really hard. I just wasn't expecting him to go in there and not get punched again, especially against a guy like Kevin Holland.
I mean, a guy that knocked out Jacare Souza, a decorated grappling world champion, from the guard position.
Yeah.
You know, it's really something to be remarked here, what Khamzat is able to do. He's having fights where he's not only dominating, but he's winning without getting hit. And those grappling exchanges and the transitions that he put on were unbelievable. That initial takedown was so fast. It was almost as quick as somebody would throw a jab. He changed levels, got to Holland's leg. And let's not forget that Kevin Holland's not known for his grappling per se, but he is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And he did offer some fun little rolls and guard recovery attempts, and he even did recover his guard at one point. So it was a little fun to watch. There was an interesting first 2 minutes there. But ultimately, those transitions that Khamzat threw on him and his ability to shift his weight past the guard, change positions, lock up the submission, and then make the proper adjustments going with the flow, and all the while keeping a strong top pressure on Holland until he finished him, is something amazing. And I personally think, and I don't know if you agree, but when you look at the landscape of the UFC, I think the next champ, who has the best possibility to become the next champ, I give that to Khamzat Chimaev for sure.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you, and most people would probably agree. However, this whole weight missing situation that he just went through, where he came in at 178, and rumor has it he was down to 173 before the commission stepped in and the doctor said you need to start rehydrating and all of that stuff. All of that aside, we were seeing him line up to be a 170 fighter and contender first, and then move up to 185. If you miss by 8 pounds, generally the UFC wants to move you up to the next division, and I could see him jumping right into 85 and just being a contender, not trying to drain himself down to 170 anymore. I think after last night's performance, he's kind of proven to us that Leon Edwards would have a hell of a time trying to keep the belt against Khamzat Chimaev, and anybody else at 170 is going to have a very difficult night at the office if they have to get signed to fight Khamzat Chimaev. So while I do see him potentially being the next champ, or definitely the most superior dominant athlete the sport's seen since Khabib, I think it might actually come at 185 and 205, and that's why I think it might happen a little bit later than, let's say, next year.
Interesting. I am one that believes he can make 170. You know, you see Paulo Costa had that disaster with Marvin Vettori where he ended up weighing an entire weight class above where he was supposed to, but then he came back and redeemed himself against Luke Rockhold, making the proper weight. I think that he has the ability to make 170 with some adjustments, and that's the thing. In the Gilbert Burns fight, he did make some mistakes, and we saw some incredible adjustments for this fight against Kevin Holland. So I think that the weight cut could be no different for him. He will make the appropriate diet changes and do the proper things in order to make the weight to 170, especially if there's a belt on the line. And I've been looking through some posts today. There's been several large MMA outlets, MMA Fighting, ESPN, that have posed the question to their followers, who should Khamzat Chimaev fight next? And there's two names that come up overwhelmingly. The first is Colby Covington. People want to see if he can do that wrestling and keep that pressure against Colby, who's known for incredible wrestling and never-ending cardio. And the other is Adesanya. People want to see, is he tested? Izzy sort of had a turn with the fans in his last fight where it wasn't that entertaining, and now people are wanting to see somebody really take the fight to Adesanya. So obviously he has business with Pereira, and Colby Covington is sitting there kind of needing an opponent. So I think that's the likely next person that he will fight. And let's face it, if he's able to do to Colby what he was able to do to Kevin Holland, and I don't think it'll be that easy, but I do think he would be the favorite, and for good reason, against Covington. I don't know who's going to stop this guy, and I think he's going to have his most success at 185 because he's still in his mid-20s. So as he approaches that 30 mark, he's going to fill his body out. He's going to get bigger. He's going to get stronger. And I see 170 and 185 really having a problem on their hands with young Chimaev.
Yeah, I do too. And I think his next fight will likely be at 185. I could see him going in there with a Marvin Vettori or a Robert Whittaker. I know he said he's a fan of Robert Whittaker's and would love to train with him. So they're probably going to become allies like him and Darren Till did, rather than like somebody that he's just going to take aim at and go for. So I would like to see him do that, and I think that there is a chance that he could jump right into a title fight after this Pereira and Izzy fight happens, and maybe he gets one fight to become the #1 contender. But I feel like Izzy has sort of gotten under the people's skin over the past couple of fights, and I don't really agree with it, but I can see why people, are a little bit bummed out that he's not trying to go out there and just knock people out like he was on the way to the belt. So with Khamzat Chimaev turning full heel last night, this whole fight week, he's kind of proven to us that, look, there's good guys and bad guys, and I'm going to the bad guys locker, and as of right now, I'm going to be the meanest bad guy the entire sport's got. I think with him coming in like that, that could be exactly what Izzy needs if he gets past Pereira to become like the knight in shining armor for the fans again, because it feels like the world's kind of turned against Izzy right now. But after Chimaev's antics, in the fight week and then leading up to the fight, I mean, he got a roaring boo from the entire crowd in Las Vegas. I just feel like maybe that would be a perfect thing. You've got the guy who was everybody's favorite kind of turned boring, if you will, which I totally disagree with, versus the guy that everybody thought was going to be awesome and nobody had really any complaints about, but now everybody has a lot of complaints about the weight cuts, the way he's handling himself and all that stuff. So I think actually storytelling-wise and promotional-wise, that's a home run for the UFC.
Yeah, and I think people want to see Adesanya tested. I think they want to see, and he's certainly not going to stand on the outside and try to go leg kick for leg kick with Adesanya. He's going to shoot early and often, and it's going to make for a very interesting fight, and it's really going to come down to whether or not Adesanya can do enough damage on those shots in, because I think the clear-cut striking advantage would go to Izzy, and the clear-cut grappling advantage would go to Chimaev. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. He does still have some work to do at 170 if he's going to make that weight class again. It seems like we're going to get Leon versus Usman 2 in England sometime early next year. So it'll be interesting to see if he does do a fight at 185 in the meantime. I think Marvin Vettori is a great option. I think Derek Brunson is a great option. I think people like that to show, can he do this to a bigger, stronger guy who can grapple? And if the answer is yes, then boy, oh boy, we have a real problem on our hands.
Yeah, as Dana White said, he's an absolute freak of nature. I couldn't agree more. Kevin Holland made him work hard for what he got, but he ended up pulling off this ridiculous, basically perfect performance, and hats off to Chimaev and everybody else on the card who decided to take a 24-hour fight notice.
All 6, credit to them.
Yes, sir.
Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Drop us a comment and let us know who you think Khamzat Chimaev should fight next. We are the home for all things combat sports, so if that's what you're into, we appreciate a subscribe on the channel, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.